LCSC students of African history, Professor Eric Martin, and it seems like we ought to just have sort of a weekly update. This is what's going on. There's videos in the modules up to the week right before spring break that explains what to do. Actually, the videos in this week's module and explains what to do for the next 3 weeks. Um, you guys have known about that for a while. I assume we don't have any questions since I haven't received any and I've asked for them a few different times. I'll talk about some of that stuff anyway. Um, but these weekly, semi weekly videos seem good, sort of like as like if this was a in person class, this would be class announcements just reminding us about stuff, right? So I'm going to remind us about a few things. I'm going to start at the end. Remember, the final project for this class is a paper utilizing all the sources we've discussed, okay? Plus one other. And that one other is what I want to talk to you about. It's probably time to start thinking about what that one other is going to be for you. Is it going to be a book on the history of something in Africa that you've become interested in or think you might get interested in? Is it going to be an autobiography written by somebody who we've talked about or more likely going to talk about? A piece of fiction, all that stuff, written by an African. And if you need help with something, just let me know and I can give you some good ideas. But you want to start thinking about that now. You don't want it to sneak up on you. Nervous conditions. That is a piece of fiction we will be dealing with. It's the very last thing we'll deal with. This is just my way of saying get a hold of it. It's a good thing to read over spring break. Right after spring break, we're going to be dealing with a history book, African Perspectives on Colonialism. I'll get you more details in that as we go. I've talked a little bit about that, but this is more of a reminder. Get a hold of the materials that you need. Okay? And then up until spring break, readings are online. And then we've got a couple of Basil Davidson videos thrown in between. So, awesome. Okay, let's talk about a few other things. Last week, let's back up the Sundiata stuff. I enjoyed going through our Sundiata discussion. Some of y'all's primary sources, your analyses of the primary sources were pretty good. Keep in mind that the whole deal on the primary source analysis, right, is one to demonstrate that you read, and not just some kind of vague maybe you read, right? Details of the story, because it's through the details of the story that's told in the book that helps you put together an idea about what medieval Mali might have been like, because this is the building block that we have. It's like, okay, well, based on this story, what can I see? Now, some of y'all, really pointed out, well, this isn't meant to be totally factual because you've got all this, magic and spirit things in here. All right. But if this is the information that you have, what can you tell us about? And you can get an idea. Some of y'all did a really good job of describing these are the kind of diets they had. This is the kind of architectural styles they had. This is the way politics worked. This is the way social structure works. So you guys want to work with that a little bit because that's going to help you on the final paper. All right, Sundiata. Next, last week, talked about Basil Davidson and this video on the Bible and the gun. I'm not going to go through it a whole lot. You guys did a pretty good job discussing it online. But the main thesis with this, I think, goes back to the history of their own type thing, despite the fact that it is about this point in time where the history of Africa seems to be, you know, really interwoven with the history of Europe. And so we get a couple of things. Basil Davidson gives us a kickoff for our discussions on the slave trade, really focusing on the African slave labor was key for Europeans being able to exploit the resources of the New World. So one of the issues that we get into is why Africans, what are they being used for? That's for this coming week, right? Um, and then one of the other things he brings up is that as the African labor force is being used to develop the New World, it's not being used to develop Africa. So that's an interesting dilemma we have there that you guys are going to continue to see in the documents you're reading for the next 2 or 3 weeks. He brings up the idea, Basil Davidson, that racism develops out of slavery, racism as we know it, and that it became necessary for white people to think of black captives as less than human. So take that idea with you through the documents that we'll be looking at through the next couple of weeks. See where it holds, see where it doesn't hold. This is how historical debate, works. And then in the video, late 19th century, really early 19th century, as slavery begins to decline, you start to have a steady arrival of Europeans into Africa. And then we get into his examples of Livingston and Cecil Rhodes. And I'm not going to go into the detail there, but he's using those as the two examples of two different types of Europeans that show up, right? And thinking particularly, right, of Livingston and the Bible and Rhodes and the gun, and sort of the dichotomy there is there. And, using religion in terms of rationalization, but also the utilization of force, right? And some of y'all pointed out in the discussion postings that the story sounded rather familiar, particularly those of y'all who have taken Nez Perce history or Native American history with one of the historians here. And that's a very good connection to make, right? Because when you make that kind of connection, then you can start kind of taking the experiences of the Nez Perce or Native Americans, and it's not going to be exactly the same as what happens in Africa, but it might be closer than you think. And it's like, oh, look at that, right? And then you can decide what that says about history in the process. Okay, that's Basil Davidson. Let's talk about this week briefly. I'm not sure I have a lot to say about it. All right, this week we've got our first round of discussions focused on the slave trade. The first part looking at why Africans were enslaved. So Dalen, Logan, Calissa, Wyatt, Hannah, Courtney, Hannah, and Cody are going to get us rolling on chapter 1. If you're not clear about what my expectations are for that, watch the video down here below. That should cover everything as we're dealing with this book. And then chapter 2, is essentially the rest of the class, right? And one of the things that we want to, let's just kind of look and see what people have done so far. What I want to emphasize to you guys. Oh, some of us are already getting some conclusions up. Nice. Okay. So, I haven't looked at these. I don't know what they say. I don't know anything here. So we've got a nice long post by Courtney getting into the Davis document without having read it, this looks pretty good in terms of length. It looks like, just doing some quick scans here. You've got some good detail in here. I'm just going to do this on a few of these. I'm just going to pop through a few of these. Um, Again, it looks like Kalissa's got something kicked off. So whoever is Courtney's partner on Davis or Kalissa's partner in Jordan, read their post and add to it. Don't just say the same thing. It looks like our folks who are dealing with Eltis need to get it out there. It looks like our folks who are dealing with Williams need to get it out there. In terms of the grand conclusions, curious how we got any grand conclusions, except Kalissa's read the rest of the chapter, and Courtney, oh, lo and behold, the people who've got their postings up are already on top of it with the grand conclusions. The rest of y'all get involved, right? And don't forget, you're looking at using these um, later on down the road for your final projects in this class. All right. I think that's all I have to say. I just wanted to check in with everybody, let you see my smiling face. And again, I am assuming my instructions are clear. Everybody knows what to do. I haven't received too many questions about how do we approach the Atlantic history slave trade, documents. I haven't received a whole lot of questions about how we're supposed to be doing the final paper. I assume that here we are in an online history course where, at least to some degree, the deal is self-education, and that y'all are getting to work and taking care of it. Don't forget I'm around if you got questions. All right, good luck and enjoy your studies.